for face. The private conversation between Yu Xiu and Guo Zuo came to an abrupt end. The hall was very quiet. Neither of them would speak easily. It was like there was a fuse in the air. A puff of smoke will come out from nowhere without notice. No one knows when this situation started. No reason appeared. Yu Xiu glanced at Guo Zuo secretly, and the two of them looked like mice at dusk, poking their heads. Either I scared you, or you scared me. Or else they were both scared together and ran away for no reason. But Yu Xiu finally discovered Guo Zuo's thoughts. Yu Xiu took a special look at Spartacus last night, and Guo Zuo read page 286. Guo Zuo kept reading there the next morning, focusing on his reading for over an hour. Later, Guo Zuo went to get cigarettes. Just as Guo Zuo left, Yu Xiu walked up quietly. She picked it up and saw that it was still on page 286. This discovery suddenly made Yu Xiu feel panicked. It seemed that Guo Zuo was already absent-minded and was just showing off in front of Yu Xiu. Yu Xiu thought he still had me in his heart. After all, he put me in his heart. Yu Xiu thought she would be happy. No. Instead, it seemed like she had been stabbed. Yu Xiu walked away quietly, but tears came out and floated in her eyes, shaking. Yu Xiu returned to the kitchen and sat down on the edge of the bed. Stupid dear. Except for eating, Yu Xiu refused to go to the main room. No matter how, she's still an ant. This situation lasted for several days. Everything was calm, but Yu Xiu had been fighting the most tenaciously against calmness. What kind of silent enthusiasm was this? It was so terrible that she was almost exhausted. Yu Xiu in turn hoped that there would be one more person in the house, and it might be more lively, so it would actually become calmer. However, the sister and brother-in-law always had to go to work. As soon as they left, the house was actually empty, leaving only Guo Zuo and Yu Xiu. The room immediately became as silent as the glass on the window, bright and untouchable. Besides her heartbeat, there was only the sound of the steam engine of the state-owned rice factory. Near noon, what Yu Xiu was worried about finally happened. As Guo Zuo suddenly walked into the kitchen, Yu Xiu's heart suddenly tightened and beat shamelessly. Guo Zuo came to the kitchen, looking very unnatural, but he didn't look at Yu Xiu. He just stood quietly for a while and took an emerald green toothbrush from his pants pocket. Guo Zuo put the toothbrush on the square table and said, "Don't use your sister's toothbrush anymore. It's not good to share the same toothbrush. It's not hygienic." After saying this, Guo Zuo left the kitchen and returned to the main room to read. Yu Xiu held the emerald green toothbrush and stroked the bristles of the toothbrush with her thumb. Her thumb was hairy. Her heart was hairy. Everything was hairy. Yu Xiu suddenly fell into a trance and showed a foolish look. Yu Xiu just held the toothbrush like that, not realizing that she had already taken the toothpaste. Yu Xiu squeezed out the toothpaste, stood by the bed, and brushed her teeth slowly, carrying nothing. It was just one movement, without changing the position. Yumi happened to come back at this time, more than an hour earlier than usual. Yumi walked into the kitchen and saw Yu Xiu brushing her teeth, which was a little strange. Yu Xiu took the toothbrush from Yumi's hand every morning and followed behind Yumi to brush her teeth. Yumi looked Yu Xiu up and down and whispered, "Yu Xiu, what's wrong with you?" Yu Xiu had toothpaste foam in her mouth. She couldn't spit it out or swallow it, so she said irreverently, "No." Yumi was a little confused, lowered her voice, and said, "Why are you brushing your teeth again?" Yu Xiu said, "No." Yumi became alert and noticed the new toothbrush in Yuxiu's hand. Yumi said, "Just about it?" Yuxiu's foam was already dripping from the corner of her mouth, and she said, "No." Yumi said, "Who gave it to you?" Yuxiu quickly glanced at the main room opposite from the window and said, "No." Yumi followed Yuxiu's gaze and saw that Guozuo was reading in the main room. Yumi was aware, nodded, and said, "Hurry up, cook for lunch." That night, Yumi lay on the bed, breathing evenly and without any movement. Yumi's eyes were closed at first, but later, when Guo Jiaxing started snoring, and Yumi heard his snoring slowly became evener, she opened her eyes and put her hands behind her head. Yuxiu made her sad. She was really sad, heartbreaking. It seems that this bitch was born to be romantic, and Wang Lianfang gave her all his naughty bones. This girl can't be helped up. She can't be counted on. This girl is a troublemaker wherever she goes. She is light-boned and can't walk when she sees a man. No, something has to come to an end. It's absolutely not okay to continue like this. Nephew and aunt, what are they? If they get into trouble, if word gets out, where would the Wangs put their faces? Where would the Guos put their faces? Can't hide it. Good things don't go out, but bad things spread thousands of miles. No, I'll ask the little slut to go back as soon as it's dawn. She cannot stay for another day. Yumi made up her mind, but then hesitated. I still can't let her go back to Wang village. If the vixen goes back and Guozuo follows her, no one would control it. Won't that be troublesome? This is not a solution either. Yumi sighed and turned over, got a headache. It seems that the only option is to ask Guozuo to leave. But how can I say this to Guozuo? You can't talk about this to Guo Jiaxing. Without evidence, it won't look good if it makes a big fuss. Yumi couldn't think of a way, and her head was getting big. So she had to get up. Guozuo hasn't slept yet. Guozuo went to bed late and woke up late. He stayed up late every night and refused to go to bed until after 10 o'clock. Yumi opened the door of the west wing and glanced towards the kitchen. The light in the kitchen door went out immediately. Yumi knew, just under the radar, that Yuxiu was actually causing trouble every day. Yumi cursed something shameless in her heart and said with a smile, "Guozuo, still reading?" Guozuo lit a cigarette and said, "Ah." Yumi sat opposite Guozuo and said, "You read all day long. How can there be so many books in the world?" Guozuo said, "Thanks." He was obviously absent-minded. Yumi said in her heart, "Guozuo, I didn't expect that you were also full of tricks. You are not like your father in this regard." Yumi and Guozuo chatted for a while, and the night went deep, and the sound of the steam engine of the state-owned rice factory became clearer and clearer. Guozuo was quite amiable and answered Yumi's questions. Yumi seemed to suddenly remember something and began to inquire about the classmates from Guozuo Primary and Secondary School, mainly boys. Yumi said, "If there's a suitable one, please help me keep an eye out for me." Guozuo was a little confused and just looked at Yumi. Yumi was like, and said, "Isn't that for my sister, Yuxiu?" Guozuo understood that Yumi wanted Guozuo to find a partner for Yuxiu. Yumi said, "As long as the roots are red seedlings, it doesn't matter if he is missing an arm or a leg. Just don't be crazy or stupid." Guozuo straightened his upper body, smiled unnaturally, and said, "How can that be okay? It's not like your sister can get married." Yumi stopped talking and turned her face sideways with a look of pain and tears in her eyes. Yumi finally said, "Guozuo, You are not an outsider, so it's okay to tell you. As for Yu Xiu, we dare not to have any big hopes. Guo Zuo's face suddenly became nervous. Waiting, Yumi said. Yu Xiu was bullied by 7 or 8 men in the spring of this year. Guo Zuo's mouth slowly opened, and he suddenly said, Impossible. Yumi said, If you find it difficult, forget it. I didn't have much hope. Guo Zuo said, It's impossible. Yumi wiped her tears and stood up, looking quite sad. Yumi turned her face and said, Guo Zuo, how can a sister ruin her own sister? We can't force you to have difficulties. Just keep it a secret for us. Guo Zuo's pupils were stigmatized, and he held the secret, the length of which was already extremely dangerous. Yumi turned around, slowly walked into the west wing, closed the door, and got into bed. Yumi slowly fell asleep.